Ladies and gentlemen, you know her as virtual. I know her as very real, Nellie Bushman.
Hi guys. So it's kind of interesting. I've been playing around with different topics to write about, and one of them that's come up is conducting a virtual QMS audit and putting it together. If you've gone through auditor training, it really is only about 20% of actually like if you were actually going to do a training session, but it is very critical because it actually saves a ton of money. You're not paying for travel, you're not paying for mileage, you're not paying for somebody's food expenses. So if you can leverage doing a virtual audit, you're going to save a lot of money as a small startup. This is one of my favorite things is like follow our thorough and extensive cost savings. Our recommendation is spend less on auditors. So that's the whole concept around virtual QMS is you're going to spend less on auditors. Unless, of course, you bring in the top-notch auditors that are $300 an hour, which I am not. So kind of introduction. Audits are crucial, period, but virtual audits really actually let you dive in more. And the reason I say that personally in my experience is when you're in an audit, you know, they give you a procedure and you've got about 10 minutes to read it, and then you walk away and then you ask some questions. Where with a virtual audit, you ask for the document, I have a Zoom going all day, and I say, go do your business, give me about 30 minutes, and I read it, and then I ask my questions, and they come back, and then we go through the content. I say 30, but it can be anywhere from 15 to 30.
I'm curious, you made this presentation virtually. Did it find and put in that cartoon, or did you add it?
No, I added that one. So
Okay.
it did not successfully find it. The AI artwork that they did for like a couple of them was all about financial audits. They didn't get the quality audit aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so preparing for the virtual audit from an auditor perspective, and then I'm going to flip it and give you the customer one at the end. We're going to outline the scope of the audit. We're going to determine who's involved. I define the video conference media. That is really important because one of the things is I actually like Zoom. That's my favorite. But many of my clients like Teams or Google or another one, and you want to actually define it in your email communication, which one you're going to use and which one the customer prefers to use. Because I did go to join, not this week, but another audit, and I thought I automatically always open Zoom, and they were on Google, and then there was a miscommunication. I know it seems silly, but that's something it's on my checklist. Gather all the relevant information. So I literally do, I actually use, and I'm going to just show this to you guys because it'll give you a kind of a context of being organized. Here's the audit I did this week. I have OneNote because OneNote saves as you go, and you're not going to accidentally lose all your notes. So I actually will have an area, an audit request, a review, and a summary. And these two columns actually are what go in the report for the auditor, for the auditee. So I use this media for actually recording all my audit notes. You're going to schedule video conferencing. Now, one of the things is I do two things. I will have an all-day video going that the facilitator and I are part of, right? And then what I'll do is I'll schedule independent ones, and I'll drop off the all day and jump back on for, like, you know, interviews with different candidates, you know, if we're doing a virtual tour, you know, if I'm having the opening meeting, the closing meeting, I actually will schedule the dedicated time because that actually helps me manage my time as part of the virtual so that I don't get distracted or pulled into something and forget to go attend those meetings. Or the other thing it protects against is if I'm having a conversation that, you know, as we all know, audits are fun for us auditors, but they're not always fun for the auditee. And so there can be difficult conversations going on. I wouldn't want another auditee to jump in and hear that conversation on the back end of it if we're wrapping up, getting ready to go to the next meeting. So I do schedule independent meetings for each person that I'm interviewing. So that's all, you know, preparing for the audit. And then also there's the reading of the documents. Now, this week, one of the things I ran into that I hadn't ran into before is most of the time when somebody gives me the documents that I'm going to review, they give them to me in Microsoft Word and they're not locked. And so that really helps me when I'm highlighting things and then I go to talk to the auditee and there's something highlighted that I want to talk to them about. It helps me find it easier in the audit. This week, the team that I was auditing, they actually locked their documents, and I didn't know until later, so I had to get really detailed about where I wanted to go. So I actually have now put it on my checklist to ask my audit team, hey, can you provide them to me unlocked? You know, I already have an NDA. I'm not going to edit them. I'm going to be highlighting it to make the audit more efficient. So that's another thing I've just added to my checklist. Set the expectation and clarify it. So you introduce the audit team, your audit scope schedule, review the virtual schedule and plan. So many of your challenges that you're going to do virtually, and this happens with audits as well, but virtually mostly is Most of the people are all over the world. I was interviewing somebody in Germany today as part of the audit team. And so you want to be considerate of everybody's time zones and their work schedules, and it's a little more sensitive virtually. So that's the other advantage by having each interviewer have their own scheduled time. We're going to outline the request process. I'll talk about that a little bit more and discuss any preliminary finds throughout the inspection or the audit. Because one of the things you'll see that I do at the very top is any potential non-conformances I found during my reading or during my discussions, I will highlight in orange. And by the end of the day, I will actually highlight it a blue so that the team knows we've discussed it and we've all agreed to it, and we can go on from there. The last thing you want to do is have a surprise nonconformance. That is just not fair to the audit team. You want them to fully be aware. I like them to read the language. When I was a very young auditor, which was 22 years ago, believe it or not, that's when you're like really full of gusto and you're going to find every nonconformance and you're going to write them up and you're going to give them all at the end. And I learned that lesson very early on. You need to get your auditees buy-in on all nonconformances, because the last thing you want them to do is escalate up to their management that you were a poor auditor and that you didn't play well. One of the things I do that's a little unique, and I like to share it because it's actually made, I actually have gotten compliments from several of my auditors, and I've only done it in the last year, so it's very new to me. I actually do a request number for all my audit requests. And if that way, if I'm doing an email communication, or if you saw on my table, it's got numbers going there. And the reason this is really nice is because, one, many of you know, you're going to look at anywhere from 30 to 100 documents as part of an audit, depending on the scope of the audit and what you're doing. And so it's easy to get lost. Did I look at it? Did I take care of it? Do I need to look at it? So, and it's also keeping that 52 cards on the table that we talked about, where when we go through that document on OneNote, you see, my auditees see it. I don't hide anything from them. So they know what I'm going to look at. I don't share the OneNote with them, but I do share it with them. We'll bring it up and we'll write things while we're talking. And actually you can see I have a typo there. I said last year. See, that's the other thing about auditing. Sometimes you're typing really fast. But so I use this green and yellow scenario to make sure I covered everything. And that actually helps you cover more and go faster, believe it or not. I actually will do a virtual tour. You cannot really do a great, I'm not going to say great, a manufacturing virtual audit. So it is recommended to go on site when you're doing a manufacturing tour. But if you don't have the ability to do it, have them turn that phone around and have them walk around, because I've done a virtual audit for manufacturing because they were in another country, and I literally still found equipment nonconformances. I still found expired product because they don't think about it and they're just going to go like this. And so you just have them go slow if you're going to do a virtual tour. Review all your documents. I read all the documents. One of the things I've started doing now, because I'm older and I get distracted easy. So it's like, especially when somebody gives me a 26-page document, it's like, oh, I'm on page 5. What am I going to do for lunch? So, it's easy to drift off. So I now actually have Microsoft Word read me the document. So it's kind of cool because they're reading it and it helps me keep focused. And then it's like, I actually will remember things a lot easier. So it's a new tool that I've added into my audit repertoire. Meet all the stakeholders and interview all the meetings. That's pretty obvious, but you would be amazed how many stakeholders, like when you go virtual, getting that executive management to sometimes pop in, they're not always interested. They're like, oh, you're doing it virtually, I can pop in anytime. Because we know as our executive management, it's very easy for them to forget something's going on, especially if you're not in a conference room right next to them. And so they might, at the end of the audit, oh, I got pulled into this meeting and this meeting and this meeting. You guys did good without me. But during the audit, you do want to interview your executive management, because during an external audit, those are the people who are going to be asked, how do you support the audit? How do you support the QMS? What do you do? How do you make decisions? So you want to make sure they get practice as well. Virtual auditing tips: maintain a professional environment. One of the things I've been working with on my team itself is, as a virtual team, it is very easy to allow your purse to sit here, to have your lunch sitting here, to have the doors behind you closed or open and there's things exposed. And so I'm like, look around your space, because believe it or not, you're going to be sitting 8 hours virtually. You don't want people distracted by things that are going on around your desk. So and the other thing is I tell people, tighten your video in, make sure, you're exposing the least amount of your area as possible. One of the things I tell people, like, for example, my desk is set up this way because I'm in a bedroom that has a bathroom off to it. Now, this is going to be funny, but so when I first set my office up, You literally could see the bathroom door from my video. And I'm like, well, I got to move my desk because that's obviously something I don't want people to see in the background of my video. You would be amazed how many people don't think of that. And so, make sure you look professional. Also speak clear, articulate what's going on, and ensure you're on the same page. For example, this week I was auditing a company that's a translation company. And they're not a medical device company. The only reason they're ISO 9001 and ISO 1345 is because they have medical device companies they're supporting, right? So I would get really hyper focused on something that was important for a medical device, and I would have to recalibrate and say, this is a translation house, they're a service provider, so this is not as critical to them as it would be to a medical device. So, you want to constantly make sure you understand the client that you're auditing and what their scope is and what they're at, and also understand where they're at. If they're not, if they're in the middle of implementing their QMS and they're not, they don't have a commercial product, you might not be writing up non-conformances for complaints yet or CAPA because they haven't launched their product. So, it's really easy to get distracted on what your checklist and forget where the client is in their company right then and there. Any questions so far? Okay, use clear and concise language. Speak clearly, talk clearly, write clearly. One of the things I cannot stand, and it is one of my biggest pet peeves, is auditors that write opinion nonconformances. That is one of the biggest things that just drives me crazy. If you can't take a requirement and you can't take a procedure sentence and rewrite it in a not scenario of how they're not meeting it, it is not a nonconformance in my viewpoint. A lot of companies will go, this is an industry standard, so this is why you have to write it, or an industry practice. And I'm like, but it's not a regulation. It's not a requirement. So those are what I call verbal conversations that I'll have, or their O5s. It all just depends on where they're at. With the translation house this week, there are several things that because they support medical devices that I thought was important for them to know, but it wasn't a non-conformance and it really wasn't something that I should write. So I started a pocket of verbal communications of things that they could improve on. So, it's just like I said, understanding where that client is and what you're going to discuss with them. And make sure the message is received. Believe it or not, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, especially you've got one of the things internal audits are really good for is you're going to get to talk to that person who may never get to talk to an auditor, an external auditor. And a lot of them are shy. They are introverts. Maybe English is a second language to them. And especially my personality, I have a tendency for those personality types to shut them down. So I really, really have to focus on turning me down and turning me on mute and letting them have the voice, and then talking in a soft voice and very passive with them. And it's something I'm very aware of. And this happens a lot of times when I have operators that I'm talking to. And when I was younger auditor, I got bad feedback. And I can tell you now, it's something I literally put on a different persona based on the person I'm talking to when I'm auditing them. And again, just keep making sure you're checking in with your audit team. Check in, check in, check in. I can't tell you how important that is. I actually was audited by somebody that I would never hire again. And I've read audit reports that I would never hire that audit again. And you can tell they read the procedures and all they did was write up their opinion nonconformances that had no relevance. They never you can tell. It's very obvious in the report that they never checked in with their team. Gathering the evidence. So one of the other things I do is I don't keep a copy of everything I look at because that's not always not appropriate, but you know how I have those request numbers? I will keep some of them in this folder, and that way it helps me get context, especially when I have a nonconformance that I'm writing. So if I'm writing a nonconformance, I can go back to the folder and I'll have a view of, hey, this is why I wrote this nonconformance up. Here's the quality record. So that's when I'll keep the record during the audit, but then I will actually use it as for my preparing as well. Get evidence to collect, visual, like when I talked about the visual tour and you're walking around and it's like the time that I wrote up a nonconformance because they had expired alcohol on the table. I said, can I take a picture of that so I can remind myself and write the nonconformance, making sure you're courtesy to your audit team. And remember, guys, I wrote this with AI with very little Nellie input, and they did a fantastic job. Common issues, software and hardware technical issues. Like this week, I had one of my interviewees, their computer was pushing out an update, a hardware, an update. And so they couldn't attend, they were delayed. So it's like, you might want to, as a preparer, say, hey, make sure all your updates are ready. Make sure your Zoom or your Teams is working. Another thing is I find that Teams, believe it or not, Teams actually has a bandwidth issue that I've noticed on my end, where my network will glitch in and out every once in a while, especially like at 2 o'clock when all the kids get home. Teams takes up more bandwidth of your computer and your network than Zoom, in my opinion, because I very rarely have problems with Zoom, but I always have problems with Teams. Time tone differences, again, just reminding you, consider everybody you're auditing. I have actually audited somebody at 8 o'clock at night because their time zone was appropriate. You want your auditee to be fresh. They don't want your auditor to be fresh because they don't care if you're tired because you're not going to find anything. So just keep that in mind, work around their issues. And then language. So I have, about 15 years ago, one of my clients had a manufacturer that was Chinese. And so I had to hire an interpreter to ask questions of that manufacturer. And that was a fun experience, trying to audit them virtually and ask questions and then have the technical difficulties. So, whenever you need to, bring up an interpreter if you need to. Have backup plans for technology, again, time zones, and then translators that is necessary.
Michelle, you have something? You're on mute.
Well, I was going to ask more questions about the.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant the other Michelle this time with her hand raised.
Okay, sorry. So Nellie just mentioned about the translators thing. So just so everybody know, I speak fluent Taiwanese, and I could speak good enough Mandarin to facilitate meetings.
Oh.
And I understand a little bit of Cantonese. So Nellie, if you ever need help, I will be more than happy to help free of charge.
Oh, no, don't do anything free of charge. I tell people, get your pay for more value. But yeah,
no, I'm so close to retire. I'm not looking to pay more tax. So
that's actually great to know. You know what? The other thing that a lot of people don't talk about, but like, we're a small organization, and so I can't audit my own clients. This is a unique situation where one of my team members works for them. It's a totally different QMS, which is why I can actually audit them. Usually I'm doing audits for other things. You need a network of other RAQA people, which is one of the reasons I told Darren, I go, get on, meet Michelle, meet Rob, meet more, meet all these people, reach out to them, because we are a network of people that can support each other. It doesn't matter that we're competitors. We're actually competitor. We're not frenemies. That's not the right one, but we're quality or whatever. We need to come up with a term, because
we're competitor adjacent.
Yes, because I can tell you, I've talked to Michelle, I've talked to Warren, they're all people that are on my dial if I have an interesting conversation where I need some good feedback to strife against, because I can make a decision, and it's like, if I'm making a decision in a silo, then it could be wrong. I mean, I'm a human being.
Ms. Lott had a comment, but more importantly, she has an adorable haircut. Can we agree on this?
Oh, we do.
It wasn't a comment. It was just something I was going to ask Nellie about offline. That's not necessarily germane to the auditing discussion.
Okay, well, you still have a great hairstyle.
Thank you.
And so, trying to check in. Make sure, so one of the things, charts and graphs and illustrations, or I don't really use charts, but sometimes it can bring home, like one of the things I'll do is I use the magic number of 3. It's my thing. I look at 3 of things. And if I find an error in 3, then I go to 5. And then if I find an error in 5, I'll go to 13, depending on if I'm trying to derive a point home. Most of the time, if I find an error in 3, I don't have to go to 5 to get the point home. But every once in a while, you have one of those people you really have to convince this is a problem. And so, I always kind of use that, and sometimes I'll graph that. And I did have an interesting nonconformance probably, oh my God, 15 years ago. I was auditing, I won't say the person, but we were going into their room where they received complaints that had been in biohazard, and they were cleaning the devices to inspect them. And I looked down, and there's like a huge box of Clorox. And I said, oh, and I happened to pick it up, and they were all expired. And I went, wait, that's a problem, because I know that Clorox degrades over time, especially after its expiration date. And so I did a little research on it, and, I wrote the nonconformance up, and the management team just blew a gasket. Well, this is not your area of expertise. You shouldn't have done it. And I said, well, here's this paper, and it's on Clorox's website that says after it expires, basically at this time frame, it's water. Your cleaning product that's been in the body, and you're asking your inspectors, who is actually a germaphobe, to actually clean them and do an investigation, you're exposing them. And so that it went all the way to the top. And then literally the director looked at the quality director and he goes, this is a valid nonconformance. You've got an employee that could be in harm's way. You're going to accept that. But it was like one of those things. It's like they thought I went above and beyond, and it all started with an expiration date. And then another client, I found the same thing where they were taking IPA and they were mixing IPA and water. And just so you guys know, within 24, 48 hours and 72, it will degrade down to just water when you mix it. And so they would mix it and they would let it sit for a month. And I'm all, it's water after, it's no longer working. And so, there's things in your auditing experience that you will go through that you keep with you. And so it's like, I am very near and dear to expiration dates. I'm also near and dear Part 11. A lot of people don't understand it and understand the requirements. So there's things I look for that I think I add value to. Another thing is looking at expired standards. A lot of companies just don't put processes in place. So there's things that you can come through that you can you have a little checklist for that you'll look at. Obviously, after the audit, you're gonna, check in with your stakeholders, look at their corrective action. Kind of interesting. A lot of people don't understand this, and I usually try to give a little training session at the end of it because, especially with your new startups, they think I'm going to do corrective and preventive action, but the very first thing they do is they go to the corrective and preventive action, and then they back up their documentation to say this is root cause. Or they'll be like, well, this is a minor thing. We're just going to correct it. We don't care what cause is. And I'm like, but the standard says for all nonconformances, you have to find cause. And so, I kind of coached them. I said, look, I get that there's some things in the audit report that are nonconformances, minor or major, but for the standard, it doesn't delineate between minor and major on whether you go to root cause or not. You have to go to root cause on all of them. The significance of the corrective action can be driven by the minor or the major. And so that's something you really want to make sure you kind of drive into. Always make sure, actually, I add another slide because this is actually this is what I learned this week. Now I'm going to flip. I talked about the auditor. I'm going to put the coaching hat on for anybody who's going to be audited and how you prepare your teams, because 90% of a medical device workforce never speaks to an auditor. They don't know how. They don't know how to prepare for it. They don't know what to do. And one, you want to determine who will be involved, but before any audit session, I have a training deck that I send out to team members as a facilitator. I don't do it as an auditor because that's not my job at that point, but as a facilitator, I will send it out and it will say, here's what you do. Here's how you talk to an auditor. Here's how you prepare. And you want to make sure you kind of prepare your organization for that. And so have somebody who's got a little, I think my deck is 5 or 10 slides. You want to gather the documents, schedule the video conferences, and then remind their employees about their surroundings. So this week, I'm not lying, one of my auditees, her office must be in her bedroom, had her door open, and I could see her dirty laundry hanging up. I'm like, it's like, be aware, let them know this is actually a professional environment that you want to make sure that, you don't have your dog jumping on you when you have an audit. You don't have somebody ringing the doorbell. You don't schedule things to come by for that. Talk about professional video conduct. A lot of your working from home, people get comfortable. Maybe you didn't do your makeup that day. Maybe you don't. Maybe you wear your Van Halen t-shirt or, your slippers or something. Remind people, hey, you're being audited. I'd like professional attire. And believe it or not, you actually have to remind people that. I have to remind my team all the time. No, I don't want your t-shirt on screen and with customers. I want you to wear a polo shirt. But I do have college kids, so that's where it comes into play. And then, obviously check your surroundings and what's going on. So that's how you can prepare your team. I think there's more. This is, what AI did. I'm going to kind of think about it a little bit more, how you can prepare. I actually am probably going to maybe write up because it's an informal document, but I may write it up and share it with my clients going forward of how they can prepare their team for audits. And at the end of the day, an audit should never be a surprise to the auditee. They should know at the end of the report, what are the recommendations? What are the nonconformances? It should all be discussed. The report shouldn't be like, ooh, surprise. That should never happen. And that's it. And Joe, do you like my end of page now without the QA? My last session, I had QA. Well, I've always had just QA, and Joe told me, Nellie, change your last slide. And so this is my last slide now. Anybody have any questions? I mean, I like doing audits. I don't want to do them every day. They are a lot of work. It takes you away from other clients, but it is fun because you get to talk to people who've never been audited. This week, interesting thing about, and this is why I'm really harping on this time, is the company I'm working with, never been in medical device. Their QA person, outstanding, wrote the procedures, went to one training class, did a really good job, but their team was coached to tell the auditor everything. It was like, you're in a confessional, you tell the auditor everything. And I just went, and so during the audit, they were telling me everything. And I go, wait. I asked one question, just answer the question. I mean, they would go and it's like, they would like literally talk 20 minutes. And I'm like, wait, stop. So I really had to coach them. I go, you guys are defending the house. You want to make sure you go yes or no, whatever you can. So that, you know, that was an interesting conversation. So that's where I might calibrate going forward. I'm like, what have you told your team members about, you know, talking to auditors? Darren, you've had your hand up.
Hey, Nellie. So question, I know with virtual audits, it at least sort of brings up the possibility of a more flexible format rather than, you know, say 9 to 5 for 3 days straight, something like that. Have you seen any like demand from folks for, hey, can we do like a half day at a time and knock it out over a larger period of time? Or are you still seeing folks want to do, hey, you know, 3 days straight and we'll do it like that?
I actually, typically what ends up happening is I will end up doing a 4 or 5 hour day, and then they'll stretch it over 3 or 4 days because it really helps them out and it gives me more time to review things. And so I think they're more comfortable. Traditionally, the 2 to 3 days was to get it over, get you in house and just to be done with it. Now it's more about, more about what's convenient for them and their team members. And so they don't mind if an audit takes a week to do. And I usually try to keep it within the same week because otherwise it gives an impression that it's going on too long. But yes, I've not seen the I need it done in 2 days, 3 days request. Most of the time it's spread over. It usually takes me probably a week and then I wrap up on the following Monday.
Okay. So it sounds like you might have like dedicated, hey, I'm going to be yours, I don't know, 30, 60 minutes, and maybe we'll meet up in an hour and discuss any questions.
Yep. And that's why I have the live Zoom going on all day long if I'm not in an interview, because then the auditee can go do what they need to do. They can pop back and they'll say, Nellie, do you have questions? I'm like, no, I'm good. Check back with me in an hour. And so we still have the open communication. It's just they're not sitting there staring at me, or they can turn me off and go do some work and check back in.
Right.
And then Loki, you have a question?
Yes, my unmute button didn't work. You always say that you use your implementing your QMS as a way of teaching the company to do it themselves. Is it the same approach with your virtual audits that you perform it and that is like a template for them how to do it themselves?
I'm always coaching. I guess the answer is yes, but they can't audit themselves. So the challenge of it is in the audit world, any FDA or ISO auditor is going to expect that your auditor is qualified to do the audit and they've been through some sort of certification course. So really, they could, but based on the industry expectation, it would be hard for them to do that. I have implemented all of my audit procedures have a way for me to train somebody, qualify them, and have them shadow somebody to become a junior auditor, not a lead auditor. But most of the time with my small startups, that doesn't happen. That happened when I was running more like Boston Scientifics and the Abbotts, when I would literally get somebody from manufacturing and train them to be an auditor and to do auditing of other production lines. But I haven't seen that in the small startup space.
Okay.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes, actually, I have a question for Darren. You had mentioned about you also do NDSAP, and actually this is just a conversation I had with one of my clients last night. A few years ago, they applied for the MDSAP, so it was very expensive, and they sold very little to Canada. So they are, they are on the fence of not renewing it or renewing it because of the cost. So what's the most efficient way and most economical way to renew that?
Good question. I guess I've only had experience with the opposite to MDSAP rather than out of MDSAP.
Okay.
But it sounds like the question is around devices in Canada.
Right, because MDSAP covers 5 countries, and then the client doesn't sell to Canada enough, but they're
So
thinking, a sales is a
anymore.
sales. Yeah.
Jose?
Thank you, though. Thank you.
Hey guys, yeah, no, I thought I'd share kind of a interesting story. So we've been registered with FDA for like 6 years and we've never had an FDA audit. And a few weeks ago, I was on vacation and when we registered, we're a small company and my phone number, my cell phone literally is a phone number that FDA has. And FDA called to set up an audit because we'd never had an audit. And so we were sort of up to have an audit. And so they called a couple of times when I was on vacation and I didn't see the voicemails. So I show up the Monday after going on vacation and 10 o'clock in the morning, the doorbell rings and there's a guy in full uniform, right? Like these FDA auditors wear a uniform that looks like a Navy uniform. We're like, what the heck? He comes in, it's like, hey, tried reaching out like for last week to schedule this, didn't get a response. So I showed up. So it was a surprise audit, not meant to be a surprise audit. You know, they usually would schedule it ahead of time if it's just a normal audit. But we ended up having like a reverse virtual audit in a way, because our VP of Quality Assurance and Regulatory Affairs is, she's based out of Minneapolis, we're in Orlando. But, you know, we sat him down in the conference room, you know, he gave us the paper that they got to give you and everything. And then proceeded, you know, I called Jackie, who's our VP of Quality, and it was like, okay, I guess cancel your plans for today. You're going to do an audit with FDA. And so it, you know, it all went really, really well. The guy was actually quite, you know, cordial and professional. In 2 days, he was in and out. And in a way, you know, I apologized to Jackie because I said, I'm so sorry. Like, you know, you didn't have the time to prepare for this. And she was like, you know, in a way, it was almost a godsend that I didn't, because I would have just sat there stressing for a week when he showed up. And we're all, you know, we have our system set up very clean and organized. So it was very easy to go through it. But yeah, it was a little bit of a scary experience when you got a person in full uniform show up at your door and what wasn't meant to be a surprise audit becomes a surprise audit. So I guess moral of the story is, you know, you do want whoever the person is on your team that's going to deal with FDA auditors, I think, to just always be ready. I mean, for us, we do an internal audit once a year. We do, you know, an ISO 13485 audit once a year, independent external. So we tend to kind of always be audit ready. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience. And, you know, we're on Slack with our team and we're like, hey, we've got an auditor, be ready. They might want to call you in. And our rule for auditors, the coaching that we've received and the company knows is like, you're always honest, you're always forthright, but it's like being on the stand with a judge.
Yep.
You just answer the question, right? It's like, you know, if you were doing this, what would you do? It's like, if you know off the top of your head and you're pretty certain about it, you say, you know, this is what I would do. If you're not certain about it, you say, I would look up this SOP, you know, and just refresh my memory before doing that process. How would you find the SOP? You know, have your team know how to find, you know, the most recent approved SOPs, you know, quickly and efficiently. Just, you know, it's almost like being on the stand, but always be cordial. And so it went well. But yeah, being on the other side of it, we don't do audits, but we receive them. Yeah, that's the moral of the story for me, is try to always be audit ready.
Thank you for that. Eddie, before I call on you, an administrative note, please. I'm sending a link to everyone. And this is a link to the calendar I'm showing you. I also put it in our weekly call on Slack. This is a spreadsheet of every one of the 229 episodes we've done, as well as the 14 we did for COVID. And for 10X attendees, you'll recall how I said it's getting harder after 225 of these to support these all by myself. So Sean has offered to help us find speakers every third week. Alyssa has, Jose has offered for the middle of August. Nellie has really come and helped out with Nellie. So this is our calendar. If anything, I'm taking a great step back. From time to time, I have really meaningful conversations with folks and I invite them to present, but this is our group. And you guys very much want to keep this going. So I invite you all, whether it be yourself with something to share or with friends that you feel will add to the community, let me know, let Anne know, my virtual assistant. I have a private group in Slack called MDG Premium Planning. I have another one called 10X Planning because, as you know, I was planning to take a great step back, and I've taken a lesser step back to continue this beautiful thing we made together. So I am officially soliciting your help to fill out these out weeks. This is today, and this is the rest of the year. So help me out, folks. Thank you. And Ed Capabianca has his hand raised.
Yeah, two questions, Nellie. First of all, Great presentation. I presume from Joe's teaching to us all that you record every one of these virtual audits. But my question is, are you doing both sort of normal recording and like a transcription? Or you're not recording at all, or what?
I actually do not record. I kick all AI out because the challenge of it is so I kind of look at it from like the FDA principle. Once you start recording, you kind of bring it to a different level. It's not as friendly of an audit. And so I that there is no AI or recording of audits. I might record the opening and the closing, but the actual interviews I don't.
What I would offer, if I may interrupt, is because I've heard this before. I am a strong proponent of recording everything because you never know when you're going to say something smart, and you can isolate it and make it into a snippet and share it with people. I know everyone on this call, as sure as I have, has said something perfectly that you've been struggling to find the right way to say, and then you say it and you're like, well, shit, what did I say exactly? And if you record it, you have it. When you're concerned that, well, this is gonna, cause some friction, or the other person might not be comfortable, I offer, if you'll give me the grace, my mind isn't what it used to be. It's like a sieve, and I assure you, we'll say some things here and I will forget. So for my use only, if you don't mind, may I record this call? It will help me serve you. Almost no one objects to that.
I don't know, Michelle, would you record an audit?
No.
Yeah.
Because what?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. The simpler one being just the file size is not going to be manageable on either a computer or the cloud. And there's a certain amount of, like, what would be the purpose? But
well, like I say,
try to get a marketing bit for Jeff.
I didn't realize my question was going to be this sort of complex, but really my second part of my question was exactly that, which is how the heck do you get it then distilled? Because really it's about sort of the note side of things, but I wasn't sure because you were talking about all the AI stuff, how you could get AI to condense it down. Because that's
AI already has a function like that, and there are other tools. What was it? Last week, Sean Smith taught us about some of the tools he's using, but right now, even in Otter, which I've been using for years now, they summarize, they take the entire transcript and they say, here are the main points. There are a lot of tools out there.
And there is a way you can run the AI features or like Firefly's note taker without recording it, and then you can just get the transcript. But you can't do that with external audits. Like the FDA does not allow recording of any kind.
So I actually feel I get the AI factor, but from a principle of practicing for external audits, I set my internal audits to mirror my external audits, and therefore I've also been trained for 25 years to be an auditor and do my own note taking. And so for me, it's really my note taking takes me through that process. Now it's a personal opinion, but I kick anything out that's AI from recording an audit, because to me, it takes away from the value of practicing for an FDA audit or a notified body audit if you have it.
And that was the last part of my question then is with respect to you doing your audits virtually, where is the FDA on virtual audits nowadays?
I was just going to tell you guys, my last FDB audit was, she was on site for 2 hours, looked at my procedures and said, okay, I like your procedures are good. Just send them to me. I'll review it. And the only questions she had were design control. I sent her the records she asked for. She looked at them. She had no questions. So it was 2 hours on site and 3 days virtually via email, not even doing a Zoom conversation. And then she'd call me and we'd talk on the phone, and she's like, okay, I'll talk to you later. And it took her about 3 weeks to do my audit. It was interesting. It was the first time I'd gone through that, and my client's like, Nellie, is there something wrong? I go, I don't think so. I think this is a good thing if she's not paying attention to us. So yeah, no, my last FTB was virtually done.
Let me try again if Alexandro is willing to unmute himself and introduce himself, so we can make a new friend today.
Yes, thank you very much for the one good evening to all the panel, and thank you very much for the invitation for this, let's say, this big amount of episodes which has run and will run for the medical device community and industry. To introduce myself, I am Alexandros. I am Greek. I live in Switzerland. I watch you here from Basel. My studies was in medical devices in Germany, so now around 20 years active in the sector. What else can I say? So yes, in the last years we fight here with MDR involvement regarding QA, QMS, and regulatory
Let me ask you a
level.
question or two, Alexandro. First, do you work by yourself or are you part of a group?
I work as freelancer in many institutions and companies here in Switzerland, yes.
Okay. And if I understand you, your specialty is regulatory and quality?
Yes, after my last 5 years experience, I enforce my knowledge also in the QA. I started direct with the RA in 2011. And later it came practically the collaboration also with the Owner Institute, and I had to build, for example, in one small company, the QMS from scratch. And for me, that was really one good opportunity to understand deep the QMS, create the SOPs, the working instructions. But what I wanted just to add here in this very nice discussion is how the things in a realistic world are, yeah? How many difficulties we met every day, especially by startups, where people are very enthusiastic, they love very much their product, but they are mostly young people which doesn't understand really deep QA and RA. For example, in my last project now, I was so enthusiastic to work with one university, and what I met there was one group of people which has feel so proud to be popular in LinkedIn by making so nice posts and making so nice talks, how impressed they are about the product. And when we sit down to create for one press-up meeting, the first deliverables that we need, what is the intended use, the indications, the contraindications, and let's say to create one development SOP, I heard some phrases from the people which I cannot share here. I hate this QMS. And so imagine now what for a fake picture we see sometimes in LinkedIn about not always young, but people which believe they are something special. They will develop something superb, yeah? But they hate to learn QA. They hate to learn regulatory affairs, yeah? And this is for one COO or CTO very important. And I wanted just to share it with you, not in the form of one frustration, but I'm thinking, and I talk also with high experienced people also here in Switzerland and in Europe and in America. If maybe we should bring as regulation in the medical device industry that also one COO bring one minimum level of understanding of QA and RA before start to handle at all in one company. At the moment, what I can share with you from my heart, really, I see that the role of one PRC is not really respected in the structure of one medical device company. Mostly, you have to report to one COO or CTO, which try to understand your language, and that's what you refer to him from the regulations and the standards. And it is something that needs absolutely optimization. Of course, as you know, in Europe, we have at the moment one big difficulty with the fact that one manufacturer cannot estimate how much time he needs to develop one device, how much it will cost. And imagine now with European foundings, they try to go for one FTA. That's why we are very thankful to Michelle for this very nice presentations. We learn, it is exactly the moment, let's say, that we located in Europe, we have to learn from you a lot, how things are running in the US.
Thank you, Alexandro. Let me interrupt you because I know Nellie has to jump off in a moment. I encourage you to come next week because Michelle Lott has helped us reconnect with our family friend, Monir El Azouzi, and he is located in France, and he is a regulatory expert as well. Michelle, do you know the topic for next week's talk?
Not yet. I just got him locked in this morning.
Okay.
Yes,
So-
Monir is here in Basel, very near to me.
Oh,
It's
okay.
here.
Oh, you know him.
Yeah.
Then
I
sure
know
to be here
Monir,
next
yes.
week as
We
well.
have made some
Oh,
podcasts with him, yeah.
Alexandros, I might know by next week if
Thank you,
I'm.
Nellie. You can drop off. I'll still
All
be.
Thank you guys. Sorry, I have a new client meeting at 9 o'clock.
Yay.
Oh, I'm gonna talk to you guys later.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you very
Nellie.
much.
Thank you.
Michelle, you were saying?
Yep, so you know Dwayne Mancini from Project MedTech or Project MedTech in general, they're hosting a conference in France at the end of September called Coming to America, where it's like a 2-day workshop
In
to
Paris.
educate
It's
Europe
in
on.
Paris.
So if enough people have signed up that they're going to move forward with that, I will be sponsoring and speaking at that as part of the
Nice.
board piece of Coming to America,
And September, do you have a date?
like the 25th, 26th.
Okay.
So, and then Luke, if that goes through, I will likely be speaking at Topra in Rotterdam the next week.
That
So
will be nice. Then we can date and I'll take you to a restaurant or something.
yeah,
Lovely.
we
And,
have some
before
more
we
blue
go-
wine.
Before we go, Luke, you have a family member to introduce?
Yes, she's called Binny and she's a Labrador Retriever of how many weeks? Well, 12 weeks. I'm just.
Did you say Vinnie, Vinnie?
Yeah, I think so. Oh. Hello.
Oh,
And you're training
nice.
her to be a
Yeah, she's a guide dog puppy as well.
guide dog puppy.
12 weeks, she's gonna be a big
Oh
girl.
my, and she's
She's
quite a
gonna be a
licker
big girl,
too.
Oh,
Yeah. She's 12 weeks old now. Normally you get them at 8 weeks, but the family she went to, she has many problems raising her. So now she comes to us and we keep her for a year, I guess.
Well, this guy has figured out how to use his nose to move the fence, separating him from upstairs, and he made it upstairs 3 times yesterday alone. So now we have bigger obstacles, and we'll enlist as much furniture as we need to keep him in the part of the house to which he is regulated, because some of the ladies of the house are allergic to dog hair. What am I going to do with that? I know, right? Anyhow, well, for newcomers, Darren and Alexandra, you're welcome here anytime. And perhaps we'll see you here next week as well. Thank you, everybody, for Joe Hage and Joe Hage Enterprises. This has been Joe Hage. Have a great week.
We have to thank